Hey folks, I'm back. Once again, keeping the boring background, and in fact, now also these boring thumbnails, because I'm just done discussing thumbnails and backgrounds with people. And if people want to focus on that, I encourage them to smash that unsubscribe button. Now, while we're at it, let's actually transition that into our point today, which has to do with a way that we can steer our life in a better direction. And this really comes down to the kinds of questions we're able to ask. Which means, depending on the people that we're around, will shape the kind of conversations and questions we can ask. Notice, I didn't even say the kind of questions we can get answers to. The kind of questions people that we know the solution for. It's what kind of questions will they let us ask. And this is very much so when people pay a high price to be at a university. A lot of what they're paying is to be in a setting where they're surrounded by people where they know that they are free to ask and think about certain kinds of questions. That if they went outside of an academic setting and tried to ask those kind of questions, engage in those sort of subjects, their coworkers, their neighbors, their family members might shoot them down as being, why are you even wondering about that? Why are you even thinking about that? And part of what's so important to me in cultivating communities, in reaching certain kinds of audiences, and why I'm so appreciative of the fact that in this channel we're going to have the kind of conversations that we have, and those of you who choose to be here know why we're doing it. And again, we're not going to get caught up in backgrounds, not going to get caught up in thumbnails, etc. What's important to me is that allows me to have my space to ask these questions, to engage in these thoughts on a regular basis, and that for me is a form of that. And as much as the communities that I grow, of course, within GAM Keto, also allows me to ask those kind of questions. And these are the things that when we ask certain kinds of questions in our lives, questions about how can I be better preparing for my future, questions about how can I be better understanding something that interests me, how can I be better expressing myself, how can I lead a more purposeful existence, these are the kind of questions that not everybody's going to let us entertain. Depending on who we're around, who we engage with, who we surround ourselves with, the 6 to 12 people we see one day after the next, the ones that we interact with, sometimes by coincidence or chance of who we happen to be at the same companies as, neighbors with, whatever, unless we go out of our way to put the effort into finding people who are asking the kind of questions we would ask, they might be more interested in asking the questions of which movie are we going to consume, of which kind of cheeseburger should we get for dinner, of which kind of just whatever it is from the consumerist perspective. That keeps us in the bubble of living our lives by choosing between sneakers or other kinds of fashion, of other things that can be an interesting, rich field for exploration, but it's not really how we're engaging with it when we approach it from that level as a consumer. And as much as, again, movie creation, fascinating. Movie criticism, pretty interesting. But when it comes down to just picking them, there's nothing wrong with them, nothing wrong with seeing them, nothing wrong with them being part of our life, but we've got to be able to have questions better than that in our lives in order to improve our situation. And so this comes back down to how can we find ourselves in situations where we can ask the kind of questions, seek the kind of answers we want to find, that'll help us improve our lives, improve our circumstances. And not just be trapped into feeling like, well, people think that it's weird if I talk about X, Y, or Z. People think that it's not something we should be talking about, or they're not interested in it, so I guess I'll give up on talking about it. That's your signal. Find someone else to have that conversation with. Don't give up on the conversation. Don't give up on following that thread. Don't let yourself be defined and limited by the people you've happened to run into so far. You can do better than that. It's going to take some effort to find those people, but put that effort in there, put yourself out there, find those conversations, improve your life. Thank you as always for tuning in. Having a video for all tomorrow.